And so I think taking the time to deliberately, when you're driving, going for a walk, to notice and wonder. If we understand that Jesus is real and that God sent him, God made him man for us, then we get a sense of the power of God. But I think it's easy to forget the power of God until we start to notice and wonder, right? I would say, almost every day, and I know this is just coincidental, but almost every week when I drive to work and I going down Gray Road, and I get in front of the school, and I look above the school, and there is an X. And my son who passed away, his name is Xavier. And so I look up in the sky and I see that X, and I know it's just really the trails of two airplanes. It has nothing to do with anything, but it's a reminder of the glory of God, right? But if I didn't pay attention, I wouldn't see it. And if I didn't see it, I might despair. But when I see that X in the sky, as I was looking for a passage, I was like, so many X's in the sky, because every time I see it, I take a picture of it. But it reminds me that our God is powerful. And he gave us his son to live a human life, to be incarnate with us, so that he could love us. He allowed his son to die and be resurrected and to return to him. That's really, really powerful. But if we don't think about it, then we can't be moved by that power. So just stopping literally to notice the sky, maybe it's just the clouds, to notice the buds coming out. I can see the red buds coming out on my tree, and that's this beautiful sign that we're renewed with every spring, and as Easter's coming, it's so exciting. Or the fact that it's a cold day, just the cold air on your skin, as uncomfortable as it is, it reminds us that we are alive. And we are alive because we have a powerful God. So that's so important for us to take the time and notice and wonder about God's mightiness and God's beauty. That just fills us with joy in a very small thing, but a very powerful way. Sometimes, I think maybe this is when I tell this story, just noticing things. So one of my favorite stories to tell is, Zave passed away in October, and it was July the next year. And I don't know if you remember, that January of 2012, Kathy Cole gotten really sick. We were all praying for her, and then she made this phenomenal rebound. And in July, I remember I came to church. I had been to China. I was very tired. I came to China with my two youngest daughters. And I walked in, and in my memory, this is what I saw. I saw Kathy Cole standing in front. She was the cantor, and she had a guitar that was as big as she was. Now, I know that's not the truth, but that's how it seemed to me, that she was playing this massively large guitar. And I remember coming up there, and of course, I was tired and just emotionally spent, because I had been with teenagers. And I saw her, and I don't know, for some reason, I was taken aback. And for the first time since Zave had passed away, I was angry. Because there was Kathy Cole, who had been really sick. And she was very much alive, playing the biggest guitar I had ever seen in my life. And I thought, what is going on? And honestly, if I had been by myself, I would have walked out of the church right there, because I was just so angry. But I was with my two youngest daughters, and I would have to explain why I was leaving, and I couldn't do that. So I sat there and I cried because I didn't want to be at church, because I was so angry. And there was the first reading, there was the psalm, and then there was this reading. Brothers and sisters, that I, Paul, might not become too elated because of the abundance of the revelations, a thorn in the flesh was given to me, an angel of Satan to beat me, to keep me from being too elated. 3 times I begged the Lord about this, that it might leave me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for power is made perfect in weakness. I will rather boast most gladly of my weakness, in order that the power of Christ may dwell with me. Therefore, I am content with weakness, insults, hardships, persecutions, and constraints for the sake of Christ. Now, when I saw Kathy, my thought was, I had to watch Zaid get weaker and weaker, and this woman is literally playing the biggest guitar in the world. And the last line of this, for when I am weak, then I am strong. Now, if I hadn't been noticing and paying attention, if I just walked away, I would have never heard these words in the context of how I was feeling. And that too was life-changing, right? Because that reading to me said, no. There's no reason to despair, because the strength doesn't come from being able to play the largest guitar in the world. It comes from the Lord and being with him. And so, and God rest Kathy Cole's soul, she knows that as well. Now she really is playing the biggest guitar in the world, right? But like paying attention, I know we get tired, but it's these moments when we pay attention that God is speaking to us, that he reveals himself to us. And if we're not paying attention to the world around us, to the readings, to the voices of our friends, when we're in despair, then we don't have the opportunity to be comforted by him and filled with his joy. And to remember, we know the end of the story, like Paul Harvey says, So, that's just important to just notice and wonder. And this book, as I was getting into the car, the title of the book, Practice Makes Catholic. One of the things I've been saying to our kids all year is, I think the beginning of the school year, maybe like in September. No, it was closer to Christmas, because he was singing Christmas songs. Leslie Odom Jr., who played Aaron Burr in Hamilton on Broadway, he was at the Palladium, and we took some kids to go see him. And he's a phenomenal musician, but an even wiser man. I had seen him speak before, and he said, gave these pearls of wisdom, and he was singing, and of course it was beautiful, but I was waiting for the wisdom that he would share with these students, and it was almost over, but he said it. He said, you will become what you practice. So if you practice demeaning yourself, that's what you'll be really good at, demeaning yourself. If you practice, never taking risks, that's what you'll be good at. You'll be good at being a fearful person. And so when we practice noticing and wondering God's beauty, that's what we'll be good at. We'll see him everywhere. And when we begin to see him everywhere, our lives will be just no matter what, will be abundantly filled with joy. So the third thing I thought about, I have always loved books. From the time I was a little girl, I loved to read. I loved to go to the library. I remember when I was a little girl, my mom would let me walk to the library, and Mrs. Estelle Black was my librarian, and I would always get in trouble because I would drop the books in the bathtub when I was reading them, or I'd lose them. And that's why I became a librarian, because I was sick of paying for books and getting in trouble, being yelled at for loving books so much. And so I had kind of a circuitous route, but then it dawned on me, duh, you love books, be a librarian. And what could be greater than sharing the joy of reading with people? I thought this is the greatest thing ever. And so when I got my job here at the Anderson Public Library, I thought I had died and gone to heaven. The most beautiful library. My kids who live all over the country say in any of the places they've lived, they've never encountered a library like our library. They said that they were spoiled by our library. And so I loved working there. But it became clear as time went on that my desire to live out my faith, I don't even know that I fully realized it while I was there, but it became more difficult to do that. For example, if I saw a child who I knew was hungry because they had literally been at the library all day, if I gave them food, then I had done a bad thing. If I saw children on the computer looking at pornography, if I were to tell them not to do that and look elsewhere, I was in the wrong. That was not my responsibility. And I remember this feeling of this job that I loved became increasingly more difficult for me to go to because of those tensions between what I thought was right and what my organization was telling me. The gap was getting bigger between the two. And I still loved my job. Like I said, I didn't know how big the gap had gotten until I applied for a new job. And honestly, I didn't apply for a new job because I hated the old job. It was because I wanted my children to go to school at this new school. But once I got there and worked for the school, I remember saying to my husband, because we both had been looking for a place to live where our kids could go to a Catholic high school. So for years, he applied for different jobs. He works for AU, and he might get a job, and we'd go look at the community, and there was no Catholic high school, so there was no need for him to take the job. And the year I got the job at Guerin, he got a job at a place where there was a Catholic high school. And so, God is abundantly good, gave us more than we wished for, but at the same time. So in deciding to, he said, why would we leave if what we prayed for is answered here and we don't have to move our kids away? And in thinking about this new job, I said, I think it's going to be a little different because I'm not going to be working for the city of Anderson. I'm going to be working for God. So don't know, that's a little bit scary, you know? But it is scary, but there is a greater amount of joy, you know, because I can live out my mission. I can do what my faith informs me to do. And so because there's no inconsistencies about where I'm working and what I'm doing, I feel like my life is more joyful. On this trip with these teenagers, and it was a ragtag bunch of teenagers. They're all musicians, but as I thought about, they're not all from the same ensemble, just the kids who didn't have anything else to do for spring break signed up for this. And as I looked at these kids, it's a lot of kids who probably don't feel like they belong anywhere. And the very first day we were there, Friday, late afternoon, we were getting ready to go to dinner. So we hadn't even gone to dinner. And we get a text from a student who said, "Hey, I don't want you to tell who I am, but somebody in my room has is it called a vape thing? I don't even know what they're called. And they're talking about alcohol." And I was like, oh boy, here we go. So, and actually, I said more than here we go. I said, I know it's this student. I knew 100%. So I go down to the room, or go up to the room, and I called this particular student out. And right away, you know, we went around the corner right away. He said, yes, I did bring the vape. Somebody paid me to bring it. And yes, I accidentally brought some alcohol. It was I have 2 water bottles. They look the same, and I brought the one with the alcohol. Whatever. So I'm like, okay, let's just call this kid George. George, you knew I was going to be on this trip, and you knew if I got wind of this, I was going to call you out. So, like, why would you agree to bring this vaping tool, whatever it's called, for somebody else? And he's like, well, they offered me money. And I'm like, that's stupid. You knew you were going to get caught. And I'm like, who asked you to bring it? He's like, oh, I don't want to tell him that. And I'm like, okay, then we're going to go downstairs, and we're not going to go to dinner until I find out who told you to bring it. And before we went, we said, if there were any instances of this, we were going to immediately call the police and send them home. So we tell him to go get the vape, and he brings it back. And then I said, let's go to your room. I really need to go through all your stuff. And so we get to the room, and I was with another teacher, and she's like, fortunately she came with me because my nose doesn't work very well, and she's like, does it smell weird in here? And I'm like, I don't smell anything. She's like, oddly enough, it smells just like this. Was your friend in here smoking? Like, and he's like, okay, I brought it. And then he comes with this water bottle, bigger than this. It was like 32 ounces, and it was 3/4 filled with vodka. Ooh. And I'm like, holy moly. And so I poured it down the sink, and I'm like, how did you mix this up with water? And then he said, you know, sometimes I just don't feel like I fit in, and I brought it for that, you know, because sometimes it just helps me fit in if I have alcohol. And I said, well, that's a myth, right? It seems like it helps you fit in, but really it just makes the problem worse. And so I sent the other teacher on with the other kids. They went to dinner, and we called his parents, we called the principal, and after we called his parents, he said he was really afraid of what his mother might do. And of course I thought of my own child, Gilbert, who was in many situations where I heard he was afraid of what his mother might do. So I had a lot of wisdom to share with this young man. But it was a very, he completely opened up and was very emotional about his life. And, he cried and he told me lots of things. And I basically shared with him, I understand that your mother might say or do things that you think aren't loving, but she's acting out of fear. Mm-hmm. She is afraid for you in your life. He's a senior, he's going to IU. I said, honestly, if you were my child, I would be so terrified. I would be so terrified. And so we talked for like an hour, and then we finally caught up with everybody else. But in the end, I called his mother because I had to call his mother. But as we went into dinner, and we had talked all the way to the restaurant, and he came up to me and he said, I would really like it if you would call my mom and talk to her. And I said, I would really like to do that. So while I had the gamut of emotions, I was angry. I was, of course, really sad for this young man. But I was filled with joy because do I think his struggles are over? Not by a long shot, but I do think he is at least aware of some things that he's doing that and how they're getting in the way of him having the kinds of relationships he actually needs to feel like he belongs. And there is a joy that comes from my job, from being able to do that, from being able to have those conversations, and from being able to, we didn't send him home. We didn't call the police. Actually, my daughter, who lives in New Orleans, said, if you had called the police, they would have laughed at you, so it's a good thing you didn't call. Because in New Orleans, who cares if you're 18 and you're drinking? Nobody cares. So that was good. But in the end, I do feel it was more important for him to encounter the rest of the trip, the things that we were exposed to on the rest of the trip. And if I were in another kind of job, I would have been bound by the rules of the organization, and I wouldn't have had the freedom to kind of do what was right for the kid. And there were some beautiful moments that I saw him experience later on the trip that I think will help make a difference in his life. So to fully be joyful, we need to just align ourselves, find ways to fully live out our faith. Because we know Jesus. We know how the story ends, but if we can't place our lives in the story and can't be in line with the story, it creates tensions that cause us to despair. So it's important to live a life of, integrity with our beliefs, so to speak. So the last thing I want to leave you with is one of the things we did, sometimes on these trips, honestly, 2 weeks ago I was saying, I will never do this trip again. This is too much work and not worth it. And then yesterday, getting on the bus, I'm like, when can we start planning the next trip? Because it is so worth it and so beautiful. Stupid me. But honestly, a week ago, I wasn't even sure what this trip would be. I wasn't sure. Like you say you're going to do things and you don't really know how it's going to be, but the Holy Spirit was so generous and made this just the most wonderful trip. And I spent months reaching out to different organizations and churches that never got back to me. And then we have a relationship with a church down there, and their music director, who has a son who is disabled, just like a week ago said, why don't you try calling Padua House? They might need you. This was literally a week ago. And so we called them, and they said, sure, come on down. And so Padua House, it's on the West Bank, and I don't really remember the name of the suburb, so not in New Orleans proper. And it is essentially a nursing home for teenagers with severe disabilities. And we had gone earlier in the morning to Preservation Hall, which is I've never been there except for on school visits, but they just have, for school visits, they have a small jazz group come in and play music and talk about jazz. And we had been saying to the kids the whole trip, people should see you and think you're different. Why are you different? And when we had gone to Preservation Hall, they had a hype woman, because I think kids come and it's kind of boring, and so she's like, if you want to clap 10 times louder than you think you should clap. If you want to sing louder than you think you should sing. If you want to do this. Like this is an incredible experience. So the kids took it to heart, and they were clapping. I think the second song, they were up dancing. And at one point, the guy said, we're going to sing a Louis Armstrong song, because, like, what would we be if we didn't? And they were like, yeah, Louis Armstrong! And they're kind of looking at each other like, what is wrong with these kids? And they started singing What a Beautiful World, and the kids just took over singing the song. They just sang the song, and you could see they were thinking, what is wrong with these kids? Which is a good thing. Yeah. That's what we wanted. And then they finally played. The kids thought they were going to play When the Saints Go Marching In, but after What a Beautiful World, they played When the Saints Go Marching In, and the kids just, like, spontaneously, it's a room that's smaller than this, they just started dancing around the room.
Oh my God.
And the musicians joined them.
Wow.
And then the people in the other parts of the building came in, and we were all just dancing around this room, having the time of our life. And it was so much fun. And I think they looked at us like, these people are different. And that's a good thing. So when we got on the bus to go to Padua House, we said, like, yeah, you were different. And look at how much joy that brought. You know, because you were courageous enough to just be yourselves and be moved by this wonderful experience. So that's what you need to bring to Padua House. We're not doing a concert. We're there. We kept saying the theme of this trip is to make friends in New Orleans. We're not doing concerts. We don't need an audience. We're there to make friends. So we're going to go to this place, and we want you to make friends. And I might cry just thinking about it. So the room was filled with these 3 older black women who just kept bringing people out of their rooms. And all of them were in wheelchairs. And most of them were nonverbal. And so in the end, there were 20 young people, looked like from the ages of about 9 to about 30. And we brought a piano, we brought some tambourines, we brought some bongos, and then we had some instrumentalists, some horns and things like that. And the kids just made a circle with these kids. And I was standing next to Stephen, and on the other side of Stephen was this girl. She's a sophomore, and she is just the saddest human being in the world. And we started singing, and she has no confidence. She just is very unhappy. And Stephen reached out to take her hand, and I kind of held my breath. And she grabbed his hand, and she sang the whole concert holding his hand. And he would say something, it was hard for him to understand, but when he heard the music, he would try to sing. That's how this concert was. Well, it wasn't a concert, we were just singing, and the kids were trying to sing with us. And one of the songs we sang is this song, Blessed Be Your Name, which I love this song, and our students love this song, and they're always singing it and jumping up and down as they sing it. And I'm like, that's great, but pay attention to the words. Pay attention to the words. It's great that you're jumping up and down, but if you're really paying attention to the words, it means you're not going to be complaining next period when you have to take a test, right? So the kid got up there who was emceeing, and he talked about the song and why we sing it, and I think I say it a lot because that's what he talked about. So I was happy to see that the next chapter of your book was Have a Song in Your Heart.
There you go.
Because this is the song that, I can't remember when, I should have looked it up, but maybe